Hey y'all, it's Jennifer. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am coming to you with kind of a look back on the year of 2022. This is essentially a video where I'm just going to see whether I achieved my goals or not. And that's an interesting thing to say in a year in which I very deliberately did not set many hard goals. This is the first year since I've been on BookTube that I didn't set myself a list of books that I was interested in getting through. I came into 2022 pretty unhappy, actually, and I was really burnt out, not only professionally, but also personally. And in some ways, whether I think of it as a hobby or not, BookTube does kind of occupy the same space in my life as a second job would. And so I think in general, I just came into this year not at my best. And so I knew that, and my goals for this year reflected that. Now, I did check in back in June to see if I was achieving my goals, and I think I was doing pretty good then, actually. So though they were few, let's look at my goals for this year and let's see whether I achieved them or not. My first goal was something that seems a bit counterintuitive here on BookTube, particularly when you are thinking about the new year and things that you want to achieve in the new year. I really, in 2022, intended to read less. And I think that was a really wonderful goal to set for myself because it did feel as though the pressure was off. I have never been a booktuber, I think, that feels like I need to read a set amount every month because I don't actually track the number of books that I read in a month. There are people who track every book they read, who track all of their DNFs per month. I have never done that, and so the numbers game has never really bothered me. The only thing I notice is at the end of the year when Goodreads tells you that you have read a certain amount of books. And that, in truth, was kind of a contributing factor to me lowering my goals for this year, was knowing that in 2021 I read more books than I ever had. In terms of being on BookTube. I think I read something like 120 books last year, and I didn't actually feel as though the year was that memorable in terms of reading. And so to me, it seems like chasing a certain number of books to read per year was pretty pointless. And so I'm really glad that I did that. I set my Goodreads goal at 50, which was basically to read a book a week. And I've done that as of right now. I've read 80 books. There are still 2 weeks left in the year. And so there's the possibility that I will finish something else. But there was also, I think, the intention for me when saying that I wanted to read less was that I wanted to read more intentionally. I wanted to be very thoughtful about what I was picking up. And I actually don't think that I did that. I don't think that I paid much attention to what I was reading, though it did make me feel like I should be reading more of what I enjoy. I think I feel a lot of pressure on BookTube to read things that I know people are interested in hearing a review of. And for me on my channel, that's often not a new release that somebody is contemplating buying. It's actually classics. And so classics take more out of me as a reader, and I read them a little bit slower. And certainly this year, they have just not been at the top of my list in terms of what I've wanted to read. And so I think saying that I was going to read less made me feel intentional about the books that I picked up. Knowing that I was trying to read maybe half of what I read last year, I really wanted what I read to be a favorite book. And there are so many books that I have tried this year that are 5 stars. Not all of them are classics, but some of them are. And a lot of them are modern classics, which is something that I've never gotten into before. And I think just the whole entire goal of reading less opened me up more. And so that was a fantastic goal, and it's one that I do think I met. I certainly have read less this year, but I feel like on the whole, this is a more memorable year for me in terms of both positive reading experiences, but also negative ones. I also had kind of a no haul, no buy, with the full intent of overhauling every bookshelf in the house. Now, I think I have done very well in terms of not bringing many books in because I was in a massive slump at the beginning of the year. That also really contributed to why I made so few goals. And so if I'm not interested in reading, I'm not really interested in bringing in new books to the collection. And I think that carried me pretty well through the first 6 months of the year. And I really am very happy with that. In the second half of the year, something also contributed to me bringing in less physically. And so about halfway through the year, my Kindle, which I had had for 7 years, I'd had since 2015, it basically gave up the ghost and it was just over for that thing. And I wound up, before going on vacation in October, getting a new Kindle. And I am obsessed with that thing. I love it. And for a few months after getting it, when I wanted to pick up a new release, I just decided to go on and get it on my Kindle. And especially with classics, it was really wonderful to get a free edition of a classic on my Kindle for Victober this year. And I've known about that for a long time. I don't know if my old Kindle was just less user-friendly. I also don't know if an updated Kindle just has so many more options in terms of font and how big I can make the font, that it's just made it in general a more positive reading experience for me to use that Kindle. And so I've often made the choice here in the second half of the year, instead of picking a book up physically, I will just get it on Kindle. I've said this many times on the channel. Really, for me, space is the bigger concern in terms of hauling books than in terms of spending. I know a lot of people want to stop hauling books because they don't want to spend that money. For me, a lot of what I bring in is used, and it's specifically from my local used bookstore where I use credit. And so money's not changing hands. I tend to unhaul with them and get credit. It's just a very symbiotic relationship. And so to me, it's always been about the space issue. And so I've had a long talk with myself this year about being in places like a used bookstore. Do I really want to read this? Or am I just intrigued by it? Have I just heard of it? I think a lot of times I would go into the used bookstore and see a title that I had heard of and that I was vaguely intrigued by, and I would just pick it up because it was there. This year, I have tried not to do that, and I think I've been pretty successful. I have just tried to pick up titles that I was really interested in. It's very hard to enter a used bookstore with any kind of a plan. It's not like a local indie bookstore or a Barnes & Noble or anything like that, because the organization is so skewed and you never know what you're going to find. And so for me, it's hard to go into the used bookstore with a list of books that I have in mind. And I feel like I've done very well this year saying, these are the books that I'm interested in. And if they don't have that, oh well, I guess I'm walking out with nothing. And I'm really proud of myself. I feel like I've stuck to that this year. The main thing that I think I said I didn't want to do hauls for was just that I really wanted to look over all of my bookshelves and get rid of books, whether I had read them or not, that I just was no longer interested in. And I need to have a long conversation with myself about books that I have read, that I enjoyed, but that I really don't foresee myself rereading. That's a very difficult conversation to have. But especially having fallen in love with my Kindle, I feel like if I want to reread something, I might be more inclined to pick it up there. And so I've only gone over a couple of bookshelves, and I've done that with y'all in my bookshelf overhaul series. And so that is most certainly carrying over into the new year. There are shelves upstairs that I'm scared of. Truly I am. That's the reason why you haven't seen anything else. And it's also because I haven't had the chance to unhaul everything that I unhauled in those other videos. In terms of bringing books in, I do have my Book of the Month subscription. I don't foresee myself getting rid of that. I really enjoy being a member of Book of the Month. I've been a member of them since 2018. And some months I don't get anything, but some months they have a lot. So I would guess on average, 2 or 3 books per month do come in. Here in the back half of the year, I also haven't had too many anticipated releases, and so I didn't have much that was on pre-order here in the back half of the year. I feel like this was a pretty big success for me, but I think it was probably by no action of my own. I just entered the year in a massive reading slump. In the first 3 months of the year, I really didn't read anything, and so I wasn't interested in bringing anything in. And then in the back half of the year, I've had my Kindle. So really, is this success down to me personally? I don't know. Something else I had as a goal, which shocked me when I looked this up, is that I fully intended to finish series. I either wanted to finish series or I wanted to DNF a series before I started a new one. LOL. Can you believe that? Can you believe I said that? That's absolutely not happened. I certainly haven't finished any series this year. A lot of that I think is down to the fact that if I have read in a series this year, it has been a series that is ongoing. But series that were finished, that were on my list for the first half of the year, I have not finished at all. And I think really the older I get, the less interested I am in a series. And so I can see why I didn't achieve this goal, but I can also see why I set it. I think it's a pretty good goal to have. And I think if I haven't read anything in a series by this point, maybe I should consider the series a soft DNF. Maybe I should really consider those as DNFs at this point, because clearly I wasn't very interested in them this year. Going hand in hand with reading less. Something that I also really wanted to do this year was balance hobbies with reading, other hobbies with reading and BookTube, because I felt like last year I had really prioritized BookTube to the point that it was stressful to me. And this year I haven't felt nearly as much stress with BookTube, I think because I have had time for other hobbies. In the first half of the year, I swung in the opposite direction and I did more crafting hobbies than I did reading or BookTube. And I was really looking for that middle ground. I was looking for a happy medium. Finally, here at the end of 2022, I do feel like I'm getting into the groove better, and I feel like I'm allocating time appropriately to each thing. Going hand in hand with that, in the sense of making BookTube less stressful to me, I also fully intended to not have a set schedule in terms of uploading this year. And that's not really gone to plan. I still post twice a week, and a lot of that is just because I enjoy doing it. It is not pressure that I feel from the outside at all. That is just something that I enjoy doing. I like posting twice a week because I often do kind of niche content. And so I know that maybe my videos where I've read books that K-pop idols have recommended, I know that doesn't work for everybody. And in fact, vlogs don't work for everybody. So I like there to be something else going up that might interest you if you are not interested in something else that I do. And so I really like posting twice a week. I think there were a few times this year that I got up one post a week, and there might even have been a couple of times where I didn't post anything. That's really what I meant in terms of not stressing an upload schedule. If I missed an upload and I uploaded on a Wednesday instead of a Tuesday, I'm just not going to stress about that. And I feel like that was pretty good. I still had that little voice in the back of my head that was like, you're missing your regular upload day. Who cares? I mean that truly, because I don't keep up with other people's upload schedules, so I assume people don't really keep up with mine. I'm just happy whenever a creator I love uploads a video. So I said, I'm not gonna stress about that this year, and I tamped that voice down every time that I heard it. So I do feel as though that was pretty successful, and that is energy that I would like to carry over into 2023. I don't need to be stressed out about this at all. And so I think that was just really helpful to me to have that as a goal. And I know I said at the beginning of the video that I didn't set myself a list of books that I really wanted to read this year. I did start out the year thinking that I might do that as the year went on. I really wanted to read like Percy Shelley's favorite books because this was 200 years since he had died. And I did not achieve that at all, but that's okay. I did wind up kind of theming my year around reading books that K-pop idols had recommended. And that was something that going into 2022 was always at the front of my mind as the main reading goal of the year, because I knew it would make me read books that were outside of my comfort zone. And you find some real gems that way. You find some real duds too. But I never said publicly what the list of books was that I had. And I think that kind of freed me up a little bit. I often find when I say publicly that I am going to do something, that I'm going to read something, that I'm going to read a set list of books, I never do it. There is some part of me that rebels at the fact that I put a restriction on myself and said I was going to do something. And so I almost never finish read-alongs. I never finish books that I'm reading with other people. There's just something about me and it's a psychological thing. And I figured if I never said the list of books that I intended to read for that project, that I might actually get to them. And that kind of made it fun to me. It felt a little bit like I was setting a secret TBR. And again, it really got me out of my comfort zone. I don't know if I really like keeping it a secret though, because there's just joy that I get from making those lists and from sharing that with y'all. And they're also just in general my favorite videos to watch. I love to see what books people want to prioritize in the new year. And for me, it's still helpful, even if I don't achieve those goals, even if I don't read that list of books, because I can look back and say, wow, that is something that I was really excited about at the beginning of 2020. And throughout the year, that became something that I was no longer interested in. Some of those books are books that I might have DNF'd. Some of them are books that I just may have lost interest in. And so I decided to get rid of them. But some of them may be books that I actually do read and give 5 stars. So there's good and bad in that. I think I really enjoy creating the list. And I really enjoyed the aspect of this that was kind of like I had a secret TBR. That was fun to me. But I also just really enjoy filming videos of that list and talking to people about what they're excited to read in the new year. And I often theme my lists. This year it was K-pop idols recommendations. Last year, it was books that Napoleon loved. And so I really enjoy a theme. I think that's helpful to me because it encompasses a bunch of different things. And I already know what the theme is for next year, and I'll share it with you now. I'll give you my real list of goals later, but next year I will have been on BookTube for 5 years, and I feel as though I need to do something special for that. And so the theme for next year, in terms of books that I really want to read, I think are going to be books that you guys have recommended to me. And I have a list going of just random recommendations that people have put in my comments, that people have sent me on Goodreads, but I would love to know down below a book that you would recommend me, because it's definitely going on the list for next year. About midway through the year, I looked back on goals, and I think in June I was doing pretty good on these goals as well. And so looking back on the first half of the year, in June, I set the goal of wanting to read a book from every single continent, because I'd read from a bunch of different countries in the first half of the year, and I have here in the second half of the year as well, and I made it to South America, which means that the only continent that I have not read from is Australia. And I feel like that's a real shame. I don't really know why I've overlooked Australia. There are still 2 weeks between now and the end of the year, so I guess maybe I should prioritize a book from Australia. But I thought it was pretty great to have read from the majority of the continents this year. I don't think I have ever achieved that in years past, so that's really exciting to me. I really feel like I've just moved around the world this year, and so that's really exciting. I also set the goal in June to learn Italian, that was going to be a priority for me here in the second half of the year. And the reason that it was going to be a priority for me, as I'm sure you know, is that I returned to Italy in October. I indulged, I got Babbel, and I will tell you, this is a success. Am I fluent in Italian? No. But am I comfortable in it? Yes. And I really feel as though getting Babbel was wonderful for me. I already had what I feel like is a good sight knowledge of Italian due to Latin, and I studied a bit of Italian before I went to Italy the last time in 2019, which apparently somehow locked itself into my long-term memory. I'm really shocked about that. So really what I learned from Babbel, what I had time to learn from Babbel before the trip, was really good conversations. Before getting Babbel, I could do, a hotel conversation. I could order at a restaurant. I felt like after Babbel, if somebody asked me a question, like asked me where something was, I had the ability to give them directions. What's always been the kicker for me with Italian is that I can understand you a lot of the time, but I have nothing to give you back. And so this really aided me in giving me a bigger vocabulary, and it helped me learn more grammar. Grammar is not my strong suit. My ear is better than what my actual studying is. So I'll know what words mean, but I don't necessarily know if you're saying I will do this or I did do this. And so that was also really helpful to me. I learned the numbers up to 1,000. I said, when will I need to know this? Actually, knowing the numbers was the number one, no pun intended, the number one thing that I needed in Italy. I was nervous the first couple of times that I went to Italy. In 2019, when I went, I was far more comfortable. I wouldn't say I was all that nervous unless I got into a really deeper conversation with somebody. This time I had no nerves whatsoever. And I was really, really proud of that, especially interacting with people who didn't have very much English. I just felt great. And I feel like they understood me, and I certainly understood them. So this is on the up and up, and it's definitely carrying over into next year. That means I need to go to Italy again, doesn't it? Because I really need to practice my Italian, you know? I really need to. So that needs to be a priority for next year as well. Just casting my mind back, I have to wonder if rereading was kind of a goal for me. I know rereading was very big for me last year, was one of the major goals that I had for 2021, and I really achieved that. Not a lot of rereading has gotten done this year, a lot of it due to my slump. And I know a lot of people say the key to getting out of a slump is to reread a favorite book, but to me, rereading, there's nothing to that because I guess there's nothing to figure out. I know where the story is going. And so that doesn't really aid me in a slump. And so a lot of rereading did not get done this year, sad to say. And I would love to return to that in the new year. I don't know that I will make it a stringent goal because I did do that last year and I felt really good about it. But in general, I would like to incorporate rereading more into my reading diet because it's just something that I used to really enjoy doing. And I have found since I've been on BookTube, that's no longer a priority for me, and so I would like to do that more. So those were all of my 2022 goals. I personally feel pretty great. It's awesome when you don't set any goals because that means you achieved them. And so really the few goals that I did set, I do feel like were pretty easy goals, but they were also goals that required intention of me. And I think I achieved that. So I personally am just really thrilled about the goals that I set this year. I really do feel like I met them and it's really inspired me. It's made the year very laid back and it's really gotten me excited about 2023 because maybe a year without goals can precede a year with goals. I would love to know down below if you set goals for this year and if you met them. But that's going to be all from me today. I hope you're all having a great week. Happy reading. Goodbye.